Part 85. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 872. The face was covered in blood and flesh, and two eyeballs protruded from their sockets, lying there as if they were about to fall out. Their eyes met for a moment, and Li Bo's mind started to heat up. What are you worried about? Believe it or not, I will chop you up. The other party was also startled, and immediately retracted his head, followed by the sound of footsteps, as if the other party was running towards him. Hearing the noise, Li Bo thought to himself, as long as I don't encounter those evil gods and Mansai Musashi Gen, the other cats and dogs may not be my opponents. Li Bo's idea was quite good, and he immediately stepped forward and rushed upstairs. The brave man wins when we meet on a narrow road. I draw my sword and ask the sky. I saw Li Bo jump up with a quick step and jump to the corner of the second floor. When he looked up, Li Bo was stunned instantly. A figure stood on the stairs. His thin body looked a little malnourished. With such a small body, Li Bo felt that he could fight 10. Of course, that's assuming you ignore the huge tumor on this guy's back. On the huge sarcoid, distorted faces emitted silent howls, and several thin arms extended from the sarcoma, extending on the surrounding walls like spider tentacles. Seeing this, Li Bo twitched the corner of his mouth and silently glanced at the dagger in his hand. Sorry to bother you. After speaking, Li Bo turned around and ran away. But he moved very quickly, and the spider-like figure behind him swooped down in front of him almost in the next second, and the twisted faces on the huge tumors made terrifying howling sounds. Li Bo's vision went dark, and his body seemed to have fallen into a quagmire. His limbs were stiff and uncontrollable, and he could only watch helplessly as this huge shadow rushed towards him. For a moment, despair, helplessness, fear, and other emotions poured into Li Bo's mind, and the huge gap made his whole body cold. Fortunately, in despair, Li Bo suddenly remembered something in his mind. For a moment, he couldn't care less and used all his strength to raise his palm sharply. As a talisman appeared in the palm of his hand, a bright light suddenly exploded between the two. Boom! With a flash of dazzling lightning, Li Bo was blown up and rolled down the corridor. The picture in front of him blurred and his ears buzzed. He didn't expect that the two life-saving thunder charms Su Tong gave him back then would be so powerful. They were like bombs, shaking his internal organs. Holding the wall and taking a look, he saw that half of the monster's body had been reduced to charcoal by lightning. However, what chilled Li Bo was that the monster was not dead. After the other half of the body let out a painful cry, it actually started to open its mouth to eat the body that was reduced to charcoal by lightning. What the is this? Li Bo couldn't help but curse when he saw this, but his eyes showed a cruel look. He took out the dagger from the prop book and was about to take advantage of the monster's paralysis to kill it directly. However, before he could take action, he heard huge footsteps running towards him in the corridor behind him. With the privilege of the human-faced owl, Li Bo could see through the darkness and see a huge shadow running towards him from a distance. Hiss! Looking at the outline of the shadow, Li Bo couldn't help but take a breath of air. Now he didn't care about finishing the attack, turned around and ran to the other side of the corridor. Boss, have you come in? Brother Gao, Brother Chang, where are you guys? As Li Bo ran, he continued to try to call for help in the team channel. But the strange thing is that Gao Zhou and Chang Wogu didn't respond to him. He seemed to be abandoned by the team. I don't know how long I ran. Li Bo suddenly stepped forward. There were two corridors in front of him, one on the left and one on the right. Just when he was hesitating which direction to go, hearing a click sound, Li Bo suddenly felt excited and immediately took out the dagger in his hand and put it on his chest. Looking for the sound, he saw a door being gently pushed open a crack, and a woman was hiding behind the crack in the door looking at him. Seeing Li Bo holding a dagger in his hand, the woman looked a little scared and whispered, "Go away quickly, this is not the place you should be." As she spoke, the woman planned to close the door. Upon seeing this, Li Bo rushed forward and grabbed the door. Facing the frightened woman, Li Bo quickly said, "Don't be afraid, I'm not a bad person, let me go in and hide. This place is too dangerous. Any monster could kill him. Now that Su Tong and the others can't be contacted, it would be better for him to find a place to hide first." The woman hesitated for a moment. "Are you really going to come in? My husband is not at home." Li Bo originally wanted to explain, but at this time the huge figure in the corridor was getting closer and closer. Li Bo's expression changed and he didn't care much. He opened the door and jumped into the room holding the woman's waist. Then quickly closed the door. "You." The woman was obviously frightened by Li Bo's actions, and her body was pressed against the wall stiffly, not daring to move. "Shh." Li Bo made a silent gesture toward the woman, and then listened outside the door with his ears raised. Dong dong dong. The heavy footsteps gradually approached, and Li Bo's heartbeat accelerated. At this time, the footsteps suddenly stopped outside the door, and Li Bo's face suddenly turned pale. Through the door, he could hear the heavy breathing outside the door. Looking sideways at the window next to the door, a black image was stuck to the window and looking inside. Now Li Bo could only press himself against the door as much as possible, for fear that the monster would see him. At this time, the monster suddenly made a sound as if it had seen something. It raised its head suddenly, turned around and walked quickly to the other side. Not sure if it was his imagination, Li Bo felt that the monster was walking much faster than when it came. But anyway, this guy has left, and Li Bo exhaled heavily. Only then did he notice that he was still holding the woman, and he immediately let go of his hand with an awkward look and explained, "I'm really not a bad person. The situation was urgent just now, so I didn't pay that much attention." The woman lowered her head and just said softly. Suddenly the atmosphere in the room became silent. In order to avoid embarrassment, Li Bo looked at the room in front of him. The furnishings of the room are very simple, with a bed, a cabinet, and a table. Almost all the furniture is clearly placed in front of the room. There is also a kitchen in the next room, which is fully equipped with pots, bowls, and tableware. Although simple, it still looks quite warm. "Sit down." The woman motioned for Li Bo to sit down, as if she was not used to the sudden intrusion of a man into her home. Li Bo also noticed the woman's worry and quickly patted his uniform. "Madam, don't worry, I am a new territories police officer, I will never hurt you." However, after saying that, the woman's expression suddenly became more nervous, and then Li Bo remembered that it seemed that the new territories police officers at this moment were not much better than Maze in the club. In order to ease the embarrassment, Li Bo could only bite the bullet and continue to ask, "Ma'am, isn't your husband at home?" When the woman heard these words, she immediately stood further away and stared at Li Bo with her eyes warily, fearing that the guy would rush up with his bestiality at the next moment. Li Bo also seemed to realize that his question seemed to be easily misunderstood, and quickly waved his hand. "I didn't mean that, I just asked casually, I am a good person." Seeing Li Bo's embarrassed look, the nervous look on the woman's face immediately relaxed, and she even couldn't help covering her mouth and letting out a chuckle. "Drink some water. My husband will be back soon. If you see him, don't let him misunderstand. He has a bad temper." The woman picked up the teacup and poured a glass of water for Li Bo, and said at the same time. Li Bo didn't care about the woman's words, but looking at the glass of water, he really didn't have the courage to drink it. After all, it was too dangerous here, and who knew whether the water was clean or not. At this moment, Gao Zhou's voice finally came from the team channel. "Li Bo, don't speak loudly. The monsters here can hear the conversation in our team channel. You should quickly find a way to get to the 4th floor." Hearing Gao Zhou's voice, Li Bo suddenly felt happy in his heart, finally finding an organization. However, after hearing Gao Zhou's words, Li Bo felt a little embarrassed. He was on the second floor now. He almost lost his life just now. Now he ran to the fourth floor. If he met something along the way, his life would be at stake. It's all explained here. After hesitating for a moment, Li Bo whispered, I am quite safe now. I am hiding in a woman's house. There is no danger for the time being. Otherwise, I would not go up. The team channel suddenly became quiet, just when Li Bo felt that his attention was quite good. Gao Zhou sent a dynamic screenshot in the team channel. It was a note with a line written in red notes. Idiot, run. There are no living people in this building, only monsters. Li Bo's pupils tightened when he saw the writing on the screenshot, and he looked sideways at the woman, only to find that the woman was also looking at him. For a moment, Li Bo felt nervous and quickly said with a smile, my friend is calling me. The woman glanced out the window and said, it's too dangerous outside. You should wait here. By the way, you're hungry. I'll make you something to eat. As she spoke, the woman got up and walked to the kitchen. Seeing this, Li Bo looked in the direction of the door, thinking about whether to escape. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the woman in the kitchen gently flipping up her long hair, and was immediately stunned. They say that old women are crazy about young people who tease their hair. Looking at such a beautiful woman, Li Bo hesitated. This woman is quite beautiful. She doesn't look like a monster at all. Otherwise, I can wait here. When the boss comes, I will meet him first, and then we can go up to the fourth floor together. Li Bo was thinking in his heart, but his eyes did not leave the woman. At this time, the woman bent down and picked up the water ladle to fetch water. When she bent down, her long hair fell down, and Li Bo saw that there was a growth on the back of the woman's head. A man's face. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 873. The face seemed to be sewn onto the back of the woman's head. The eyes were slightly closed, but Li Bo noticed that the hair under the man's nose was trembling slightly. This man is still alive. Li Bo's heart tightened. There was only one thing on his mind at this time, run. He glanced at the door, stood up quietly, and walked towards the door step by step. He gently held the door handle with one hand, took a deep breath and twisted it hard. Click. There was a soft sound from the door, but Li Bo was stunned for a moment. The door can't be opened. Seeing this, Li Bo wanted to try again, but no matter how hard he tried, the door still didn't move at all. You want to leave? Li Bo looked back and found the woman standing in the kitchen, holding a kitchen knife in one hand and staring straight at him. Let me see if the door is locked. Li Bo quickly shook his head and explained, twisting a few times casually as he spoke, well, it's locked, so I feel more at ease. With that said, Li Bo let go of the door handle and sat back on the chair. When the woman saw this, she silently put down the kitchen knife in her hand, turned around, and unknowingly took out a piece of meat from above. She waved the kitchen knife in her hand vigorously and began to chop the meat. Bang bang, the sound of chopping meat echoed in the kitchen. While chopping meat, the woman said to Li Bo, my husband is an alcoholic. He beats me every day when he comes back. In fact, I also thought about leaving, but he would catch me every time when he came back. He was beaten and bruised all over his body. The woman's voice was very calm, and she told Li Bo her misery. It's just that Li Bo's left ear went in and the right ear went out, and he was thinking about how to escape from here. I used so much force just now that even the security door should have been opened. There is no movement at all from this door. I'm afraid breaking the door violently won't work. If I want to get out, I'm afraid I have to deal with this woman. Thinking of this, Li Bo thought about it for a while. He felt that the woman was not necessarily a bad person, but just a poor person. If she told her well, she might not let him go. However, Just in case, Li Bo still held the Chapter 2 Thunder Talisman given to him by Su Tong in his palm. Ahem, I don't think it's good if my friend is waiting for me outside. How about I go find my friend first? Li Bo coughed twice and spoke carefully. When the woman heard this, her chopping knife stopped in mid-air, and the atmosphere in the room suddenly became quiet. Li Bo stood up carefully. I'm also worried about your husband's misunderstanding when he comes back. As he spoke, he took a step back and pressed his body against the door. Whoa! However, what worried Li Bo did not happen. Instead, the woman dropped the kitchen knife and lay on the chopping board crying. Just as she cried, the woman's voice began to grow smaller and smaller. As the woman's voice gradually disappeared, the temperature of the entire room began to become colder. The face sewn on the back of the woman's head gradually became three-dimensional, her eyelids trembled slightly, the joints on her body began to make a clicking sound, and the joints of her limbs began to become thicker. Tear. Immediately, the woman's clothes were torn apart, and a giant-like figure rose from the ground. Her black muscles were like tempered steel, and her long dark green hair danced in the air, gradually twisting into tentacles like giant pythons. Me. Li Bo looked at the figure in front of him, and his head was buzzing for a moment. At this moment, he suddenly remembered that the woman said before that his husband had a bad temper, so he must not let his husband misunderstand. Could this be his husband? I saw the man's eyelids open, his red eyes locked on Li Bo at a glance, his eyes full of hatred and anger, his huge fist smashed the entire kitchen into pieces, his hands covered his head in pain, and screamed, that bitch stole someone behind my back again. Li Bo's face turned green when he heard this, and he tried desperately to twist the door with both hands, but the door didn't move at all. Seeing the man roaring in pain and the aura on his body becoming more and more terrifying, Li Bo made a bold decision while his scalp was numb. Plop! I saw Li Bo pushing the golden mountain and knocking down the jade pillar, kneeling on the ground with a bang, and hugging the man's thigh. Brother, you are finally back. If you don't come back, my sister-in-law will, woo woo woo. The man was startled when he heard this. His long dark green hair suddenly wrapped around Li Bo's neck and lifted him up from the ground. His eyes looked at Li Bo's body, and there was a moment of confusion in his eyes. Who are you? Have you heard of my story? Li Bo was stared at by scarlet eyes all over his body. He knew that the next wrong thing he said might cause him to have an accident. He swallowed his foam for a moment and reached out to stroke the man's hair. You don't need to hear that, your hair is already full of stories. After speaking, Li Bo quickly continued, Brother, I am our police officer. I heard from my neighbor that someone was committing adultery, so I came here to catch the adulterer. Look, I'm wearing a police uniform. Li Bo quickly pointed to his police uniform. When he heard the word adultery, the man immediately grabbed Li Bo's head as if he was deeply stimulated. His huge palm was like an iron hoop, trying to crush Li Bo's head off. You lied to me. It's obvious that you are committing adultery with my wife. You are the only one here. Although the man was angry, he did not completely lose his intelligence. His eyes scanned every corner of the room, obviously not believing what Li Bo said. I didn't lie to you. I really came here after receiving the police report. I can prove to you that it is impossible for me to commit adultery with your wife. Feeling the man's anger getting stronger and stronger, Li Bo knew that it was time to make a sacrifice. I saw him take out the dagger from the prop book and silently said in his heart, Brother, I'm sorry. As he said that, he saw Li Bo swing his sword and sweep it under his crotch. For a moment, there was blood like a column, and the flesh on Li Bo's face was trembling with pain. Brother, I claim to be innocent. It is impossible for me to commit adultery with my sister-in-law. Li Bo's operation seemed to break the man's cognition. Li Bo endured the severe pain, pointed to the door and said, I have seen that man before. We can go out to find him together. I swear in the name of my Dragon King, I promise, this will definitely not be the first time for that man. After hearing Li Bo's words, the man slowly let go of his hand, but the beating red eyes in his pupils became more intense. Li Bo could even feel the terrifying murderous aura emanating from the man. The dark green hair was curled up, and Li Bo was caught in the air. Then the man turned around and looked at the kitchen knife on the kitchen display board, stretched out his hand and grasped the knife in his hand. The originally ordinary kitchen knife, when the man held it, dark mist wrapped around the blade, turning the kitchen knife into a 3-meter long and half-meter wide knife, which was roughly dragged to the ground by the man. "Take me to him." A low growl came from the man's throat, and it was obvious that Li Bo's last words hurt him deeply. At this moment, on the steps on the other side, a figure slowly walked down. When looking at the Kowloon walled city in front of him, Su Tong showed a bit of surprise on his face. The cave world in front of him was completely different from the last time he left. Using the life icon to look around, I saw that the originally empty rooms were already occupied by people. Those doors and windows that were destroyed were restored as before. A layer of black hair surged on the ground, like a thick carpet, and the cave had completely changed its appearance. Su Tong tried to call up the team channel, but when he took a look, he found the screenshot note left by Gao Zhou in the team channel. Looking at the content on the note, Su Tong frowned for a moment, raised his head and looked at the doors and windows on the 4th floor. Su Tong tried to jump up directly. As a result, an unexpected scene appeared for him. With his own strength, he could not even jump 1 meter. Warning. You have entered a special space. Please abide by the rules here. No climbing, no flying, no wall climbing, no, no, no. A series of urgent warning sounds from the props book kept ringing in his ears. It was as if there was a force restraining him from somewhere. Ding. At the same time, Su Tong felt a muffled sound above his head. When he looked up, he saw a piece of money falling from his luck and breaking into several pieces. Obviously, his actions just now triggered some kind of rule power here, and this money helped him block it. The gods can create caves, and caves have their own rules. Su Tong had read about this in a book, but when he came here before, there were not so many restrictions, and now the restrictions have reached the point where he cannot even disobey them. What happened in the cave during this time? The flow of time in the cave is completely different from that in the outside world. Even though it was only 2 days since we last left, it is already a long time in the cave. If you want to know what happened in the cave, you can only find Gao Zhou and the others. Thinking of this, Su Tong turned around and walked towards the 4th floor. His pace was very fast, and he climbed to the 1st floor in almost 2 or 3 steps. However, when Su Tong stepped on the steps and walked up the stairs step by step, when he raised his head again, he was suddenly stunned. I saw that the words 2nd floor were still written in red pen on the wall at the entrance of the stairs in front of me. Ghost hits the wall. Su Tong was startled, but soon felt that it didn't look like it. The so-called ghost hitting the wall used yin qi to cover the 5 senses of the person, so the ghost hitting the wall was also called the ghost covering the eyes. But the yang energy in his body is like a torch, how could he be trapped by such a trick? Since it's not a ghost hitting the wall, it means someone is doing something ghostly. Thinking of this, Su Tong looked behind him and suddenly saw a vague shadow downstairs in the shadows, appearing and disappearing behind him. Su Tong activated his divine vision, but before he could see clearly what the other party was, the warning sound sounded again. At the same time, by his own luck, the 2nd copper coin fell. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shuigan Xiao. Chapter 874. Triggering the rules here again made Su Tong feel deeply malicious, as if all the rules here were aimed at him. The shadow under the stairs seemed to realize that Su Tong had discovered him, and immediately turned around and disappeared. Now it was too late for Su Tong to take action even if he wanted to. Is it a player? Or a Japanese? Or? Looking at the disappearing shadow, Su Tong did not chase it. He just wanted to find out what happened here. He immediately stepped forward and continued walking to the third floor. There was no longer any interference from the shadow, and this time there was no longer the obstacle. But when he came to the fourth floor, he found that the hiding place of Gao Zhou and Chang Wuju had been smashed into ruins. The bloodstains on the ground that had turned into dark red made Su Tong suddenly have a bad feeling in his heart. He tried to take out a piece of paper, wrote on it, blinked, and sent a screenshot of the content of the note to the team channel. "I'm on the fourth floor, where are you?" After waiting for about 10 seconds, Gao Zhou's response finally came from the team channel. It was the same note: corridor on the left, go west to the second corridor to the second to last room, be careful and obey the rules, otherwise it is very dangerous. Then came another note. I saw 3 rules listed on this note. 1. Unless it is absolutely necessary, do not fight with the residents here, and even if you do, don't let other residents see it. 2. Walk quickly if you can't walk anymore, stop and visit the nearest resident. 3. Never tell them that they are not alive. Every time we send a message, some of our points will be deducted. Looking at the messages sent by Gao Zhou, Su Tong's expression became solemn. He knew that Gao Zhou would never send these inexplicable things. These messages must be the experience they accumulated here. Immediately, Su Tong did not dare to continue chatting. God knows how long Gao Zhou and Chang Wuhan had been staying here. Although their alliance points were sufficient, plus the props left for Gao Zhou and the 2 last time, this place had become so strangely, Su Tong didn't dare to say how many points they had left. According to the information on Gao Zhou's note, Su Tong walked toward the corridor on the left. The dark corridor became darker and darker as he walked. Black hair can be seen everywhere on the walls, the floor, and little drops of blood. It is said that a person's hair and nails continue to grow for 2 to 3 months after death. The fluffy fine hair all around makes people feel as if this building is made of the corpses of dead people. Boom. At this time, the sound of gongs and drums came from behind the corridor, and a group of stars flickered in the darkness, walking towards Su Tong. Boom. 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 Along with the sound of gongs and drums, the originally dark corridor gradually lit up with lights, and a strange noise came from every house. There were women's screams, children's cries, and even bursts of dull knocking. The dead Kowloon-walled city seemed to become alive at this moment. Su Tong frowned, and then he saw the door in front of him being pushed open. A naked woman was resting and half leaning against the door. When the woman saw Su Tong, a charming smile appeared on her face. He raised his fingers towards Su Tong and said, "Want to come and play? It's very cheap today." Just as the woman finished speaking, the door to the opposite door suddenly opened, and a dark and skinny hand suddenly popped out of the door. Its long and thin arm was as long as a bamboo pole, grabbing the woman's arm and trying to pull her into him's room. But the woman seemed to have expected this. After taking half a step back, a bloody mouth suddenly poked out of the dark room behind her. She opened her mouth and bit the skinny palm into 2 pieces. Kaka kaka. Suddenly there was a crisp gnawing sound behind the woman. After the owner of the palm opposite the door broke his arm, he hurriedly took his palm back and then closed the door. Su Tong could hear a burst of smashing sounds coming from the room. I know if the owner of the palm is venting his anger. This scene made Su Tong frown. He didn't know whether the people in front of him were ghosts or monsters, but he could clearly feel that they exuded a desperate and suffocating malice. The only ones that can be used as reference are probably the monsters in the Yin and Yang Dao. Su Tong didn't want to stay here and moved forward quickly. But as he walked, he realized that his feet were getting heavier and heavier as he walked. When he looked down, he saw that his legs were actually covered with a thick layer of hair. Break. Seeing this, Su Tong's heart was trembling. After stepping down, a pure yang fire emerged from the sole of his foot, which instantly burned the hair wrapped around it. Just this move caused the hair on the surrounding walls to be stimulated, causing neat ripples to form. Click. Su Tong's expression changed, he stretched out his palm, and saw a broken piece of money falling from his head. Another one shattered. As soon as they entered the cave, 3 coins were shattered in one breath. Even Su Tong felt unprecedented pressure. At this time, the original noise around him suddenly became quiet. Su Tong looked sideways and saw pale faces standing in front of the doors and windows, staring at him. The so-called criticism came to nothing, and his empty eyes were full of hostility and anger, as if he was silently rebuking Su Tong, a person who broke the rules. Su Tong thought of the so-called rules that Gao Zhou had just sent to him. Apparently, he seemed to have broken one of them inadvertently. Sensing that the unkind looks of the figures behind the doors and windows were getting stronger and stronger, Su Tong looked back at the open door on the left and walked in without any hesitation. It wasn't until the moment he walked into the door that the strong malice gradually dissipated from him. There is indeed some trouble in this cave. The eldest princess doesn't know these rules and doesn't know if she will be in danger. Su Tong thought of the eldest princess who could not share the team channel, and felt a little worried about her. But after thinking about it, the eldest princess understood the strangeness of these caves better than she did. Coupled with her strength, she felt a lot more relaxed for a while. He raised his head and looked around the room, and found that it was actually a barber shop. There is a mirror and a chair in the room, with manual hair clippers, razors, and towels nearby. But the blood-stained look on it would make anyone feel uncomfortable looking at it. Turning around again, I found that the door had been closed at some point. Su Tong tried to open the door, but found that he could not move the door even with his strength. Is it the power of rules again? Seeing this, Su Tong could only give up opening the door and enter the cave world. He must abide by the rules here, otherwise he will inevitably be counterattacked by the power of the rules. Buzz. At this time, the door to the side of the house was pushed open, and a man in a red cloak came out. The man looked to be in his 30s and had messy hair. When he saw Su Tong, his face suddenly showed a bit of anger. "I've been waiting for you for a long time, why are you here so late?" The man said and sat on the chair minding his own business. "Hurry up, I'm in a hurry." Hearing the man's words, Su Tong glanced at the razor beside him, and immediately showed an apologetic smile on his face. "I'm sorry, something was delayed and I kept you waiting for a long time." As he spoke, he walked to the chair, reached out and picked up the razor on the small table beside him, looked at it in his hand, then pulled up the chair's sharpening cloth and scraped it casually a few times. "Hurry up, I have an important date today," the man urged impatiently. Su Tong took one look at the man's hair and asked casually, "Is this an important date? She must be a very beautiful girl." Facing Su Tong's praise, the displeasure on the man's face suddenly softened a lot. "Yes, do you know that feeling? Just one look at me and I feel that I can only live for her in this life, so treat her right, she will rush over to pick me up, and you'd better fix my hair before she comes." Su Tong nodded. "Oh, then your current hairstyle is indeed not suitable for dating. So, I think it would be better for you to change your hair." The moment Su Tonghua's voice fell, he waved the razor in his hand, and a dazzling cold light burst out from the shimmering blade and cut directly from the man's throat. Suddenly a look of confusion appeared on the man's face, and his head fell to the ground. Just at this time, there was the sound of the door handle twisting outside the door, and a woman's voice came from outside the door. "Honey, I'm here to pick you up." As the door opened, a pale palm stretched out from the crack of the door. A strong putrid odor instantly filled the entire room. The moment the door was pushed open, A black aura like a tide filled the entire room. A woman with an almost twisted body stood outside the door, staring at the person sitting on the chair with wide eyes. Her fat belly split into a bloody mouth, and she screamed, "My dear, you are simply me. The girl of my dreams." In front of the mirror, a delicate face appeared on the man's head. Is he handsome? Of course handsome. This is the head I modeled after Haitian's face. Although his expression is slightly stiff, after putting on Jack's mask, he is almost the same as a real person. The woman's huge body quickly rushed forward, picked up the man on the chair, and then stuffed him directly into the blood plate in her abdomen. Along with the sound of chewing and grinding, blood instantly splashed a layer of black blood on the mirror in front of him. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 875. The woman seemed to be particularly satisfied with today's delicious food. After throwing down a black coin, she slowly walked out of the door while shaking her fat body. Su Tong picked up the black coin on the ground. The material of the coin was a bit soft when pinched. It didn't look like metal, but more like some kind of dried meat made of flesh and blood. You get the side quest, Professional Barber. The task requires you to act as a qualified barber and obtain at least 7 coins. Mission time, 7 hours. Mission failure, 30% of alliance points will be randomly deducted. At this time, a task prompt appeared in the prop book. It turns out this thing is called money supply. Su Tong looked at the black coin in his hand and wanted to throw it into the prop book, but found that the prop book refused to include it. Yes, you still have times when you are picky about food. Su Tong curled his lips and put the donation into his pocket. Is there a way to coexist with monsters? It's interesting. The cave world in front of you is no longer as simple as leveling up and fighting monsters, but learning to coexist with those monsters under the rules. Thinking of this, Su Tong looked at the other door in the room. When he opened the door, a strong smell of blood suddenly hit his face. It was a small room with only a bed and some daily necessities. There were fresh blood stains on the walls and floor everywhere. But there was no body as he expected, only a white coat stained red with blood. This should be what a barber wears. Su Tong picked up the clothes, shook the blood away from the clothes, and immediately put them on himself. Facing the mirror in the room, she combed her hair. I have to say that even if I have such a pure and flawless soul, I am really not worthy of Du Annan's face full of flesh. It made him look less like a barber and more like a butcher in a slaughterhouse. He walked out of the room, came to the trash can nearby, stretched out his hand and lifted a head out of it. Put the head on the small table aside, not to mention it looks pretty good. What are you doing? You are not a barber at all. Who are you? The man stared at Su Tong with a horrified expression, but he saw Su Tong picking up the razor on the side and looking at his head. But that woman likes the hairstyle I designed, doesn't she? When the man heard this, he immediately started yelling, "What is a designed hairstyle? It's obvious that he has changed his own head." Su Tong ignored his yelling and continued, "How much benefit has that woman given you? Are you willing to be her snack?" The way the man shut his mouth stubbornly and refused to say another word to Su Tong not only reminded Su Tong of Li Bo. I don't know what is happening to this lucky guy now. Well, since you don't want to say it, forget it. Su Tong didn't mean to force him. He rummaged through the props book and found the previously unused headphones and put them into the man's ears. He took out another roll of black cloth and tightly covered the man's eyes. Then he sat aside, took out the hookah without haste, lit the tobacco, and sat there happily smoking. The room was eerily quiet for a moment, with only the carbonized tobacco in the pot flickering as Su Tong breathed. After about a few minutes, the man with only his head started to panic. Are you still here? Who are you? What are you going to do? Where are you? Just talk. There was no sound, no sight, and in total darkness, the man became more and more nervous. He tried his best to make a sound, but he never got a response. This feeling would be the ultimate torture for anyone. Su Tong has experienced this feeling. In the isolation room of the hospital, the only difference is that the isolation room can make people feel depressed and painful, but at least he still has some ability to move. He knows that this room is safe. For this smart big heart, in terms of his head, he didn't even know what would happen in the next second. This kind of pain was not something that ordinary people could bear. So he didn't need to do anything, just wait quietly. After about 5 or 6 minutes, Su Tong didn't ask or say anything, and the man almost said everything in his mind. It turns out that the woman often finds other men to be her boyfriend. Being her boyfriend not only gets a lot of money, but also gets her protection. But every once in a while, a woman will swallow these boyfriends into her stomach. In her words, the deeper the love, the more she can't help but want to destroy them. This man knew about this, but he still dared to take the initiative to send it to his door, precisely because he found that women are obsessed with appearance. Only the better the appearance, the better her appetite will be. Therefore, he never grooms himself, and even makes himself sloppy on purpose. Although women like him very much, they really can't tolerate his messy hair, so they take him to get a haircut every time. He would always find an excuse to escape. This time the woman seemed to be anxious, so she forced him into the barber shop. So he could only kill the barber. In order not to be discovered by the woman, he even deliberately regarded Su Tong as the barber, just to let him bear the woman's anger. But he never expected that Su Tong couldn't cut hair, but he directly changed his head. In addition, the man also said many things. For example, they were originally residents of Kowloon Walled City. After they appeared here inexplicably, the whole world seemed to be going crazy. The malice pouring out of the building caused the pent-up anger and despair in everyone's heart to explode. Finally, they devoured each other, and the residents turned into terrifying monsters. The more oppressed and downtrodden those people were before, the more terrifying they become. Now in this walled city, in addition to the earliest residents of Kowloon Walled City, there are many other residents. After the first few days of turmoil, there is no normal person in this walled city. No wonder. When Su Tong heard this, he felt relieved immediately. It seems that the perverted murderer who was madly poisoning the residents wanted to sacrifice the lives of these residents to the cave world. Because many people were directly poisoned in their dreams, many ghosts, including the man with only his head left in front of him, still stubbornly believe that he is still alive and has just turned into a monster. Why did the guy who poisoned me do this? Is it because of Gen Mansai Musashi? Many doubts emerged in Su Tong's mind. At this time the man revealed more information. We have to make offerings every once in a while, and God will have his slaves come door to collect the offerings. Those who fail to pay enough will be captured and become sacrifices to God. The money provided was the black coin that the fat woman just threw to Su Tong. This thing was made by a desperate soul and was filled with astonishing resentment. As for the so-called God, Su Tong guessed that it was probably Gen Mansai Musashi. Could it be that he had completely absorbed the 3 shrines? If that were the case, everything would make sense. Su Tong frowned, feeling a lot of pressure. Mansai Musashigen's power now far exceeded his expectations. Dong dong dong. At this time, the sound of a watch was heard outside the door again. Su Tong walked to the window, looked out, and found that the lights in the corridor were gradually extinguishing. The originally noisy world gradually returned to calm at this moment. Seeing this, Su Tong simply walked out of the door. After looking up at the room number, he walked deeper along the corridor step by step. Following the instructions on Gao Zhou's note, Su Tong walked to the door of the penultimate room on the west side. He raised his hand and knocked lightly on the door. After the peephole in the room visibly flashed, the door was quietly opened, and a figure that Su Tong had never expected stood behind the door. It was none other than Maida, who had been missing for a long time. Maida nodded to Su Tong and let him in. When Su Tong entered the room, a little girl was sitting on a chair, looking at Su Tong curiously. Head. Before Su Tong could think about the origin of this little girl, the voices of Gao Zhou and Chang Liuzhou came. Su Tong looked at the sound and found an inconspicuous hole in the wall next door. Gao Zhou and Chang Liuzhou were hiding behind this wall. Why are you hiding here? Su Tong stepped forward, while Gao Zhou and Chang Liuzhou took a step back so that Su Tong could see them clearly. Su Tong was immediately shocked when he saw the result. Gao Zhou and Chang Liuzhou did not play roles, but appeared here with their true colors. But now I'm afraid even if Gao Zhou's wife comes, she may not be able to recognize Gao Zhou. I saw that Gao Zhou's face was full of black hair, and his left eye was torn open by something. The scar was like a centipede, spreading from the corner of his mouth to the corner of his lips, looking like an evil ghost, completely disfigured. Chang Liuzhou on the side is not much better than him, but he looks fine at first glance, but if you look closely, you can see that this guy has lost a lot of weight, and the whites of his eyes are full of bloodshot eyes. Before Su Tong came, he guessed that these two unlucky guys would have a hard time here, but he didn't expect it to be so bad. Su Tong was silent for a moment and then said, "I'm sorry, I didn't expect things to get so bad." "It's not too bad. In fact, this is also an early adaptation." Gao Zhou smiled and scratched his hair, not taking his suffering during this period seriously. Anyway, no matter how bad the situation is, they have encountered it, so this trouble is nothing. Su Tong wanted to break open the wall, but the two people hurriedly stopped Su Tong. They deliberately hid here to facilitate a sneak attack. Su Tong nodded, and after thinking for a while, he summoned the Great Sun Ruyi furnace. The furnace trembled and emitted a blazing temperature. The thunder fluid inside immediately boiled and turned into rich life essence under Su Tong's command. Down and injected into their bodies. With the help of this pure and majestic life essence, the wounds on the two men healed quickly at a speed visible to the naked eye, sweeping away the fatigue on their bodies. As soon as the two of them regained their strength, Su Tong turned his head to look at Maida and pushed a stream of life essence to him. As a result, after Maida took it over, she injected the life essence into the little girl beside her. Seeing this, Su Tong simply took out another ball and sent it over. "I still have some here, just absorb it." After hearing this, Maida nodded and completely absorbed the life essence. After everyone was restored to a good state, Su Tong asked them about what happened during this period, which was basically similar to what the man said. But what Su Tong never expected was that the so-called god was not Mansai Musashi Gen, but a guy who was never expected, Mao Suifeng. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 876. How could it be him? Su Tong was also shocked when he heard this name. He originally thought that the god the man was talking about was Gen Mansai Musashi, who had absorbed the evil gods in the three shrines. This guy should be surprisingly powerful. However, now he learned from Gao Zhou that the so-called god was actually the mortal spear Suifeng, which was beyond Su Tong's expectations. Gao Zhou also knew that this statement was hard to accept, but he was certain that it was Mao Suifeng. Because during the last offering ceremony, Chang Liuzhou took the risk to attend the offering ceremony, and the person offering the offering was none other than Mao Suifeng. Behind the walled city, there is an altar of flesh and blood. There is a huge temple on the altar. The person worshipped in it is Mao Suifeng. We didn't recognize him at first, until a resident recognized this guy and shouted out in public after his name was called. The resident turned into a pile of minced meat on the spot. When Chang Wahen talked about the situation at that time, a rare solemn look appeared on his face. This matter was so strange that Su Tong thought he might go to the temple to have a look. If it was really Spear Suifeng, The other party might even recognize him. "Boss, it will be the day for you to pay tribute soon. We don't have enough money on hand, and..." Gao Zhou said seriously, "Our points are almost exhausted." The points Gao Zhou talks about are alliance points. Su Tong and the others now have tens of thousands of alliance points in total. However, Gao Zhou and Chang Liuzhu, who are in the cave, have to consume a fixed amount of points every day. They have no way to earn points, and time here flows very fast. If there are no alliance points, they don't know what will happen. This is also the reason why Gao Zhou and Chang Liuzhu dare not send more messages in the team channel, because every message will deduct part of their points. That prop that can be used to revive a corpse, if we had known we should have exchanged it. Chang Liuzhu said with regret on his face. When they exchanged items at Wanja Commercial Bank, the two of them didn't know what the borrowed corpse meant. They just thought the prop was too strange, so neither of them chose to exchange it. It was only later that I discovered, belatedly, that the influence of the cave could be circumvented by reviving corpses. By the time they realized it, it was already too late, because there were only two of this item. After they exchanged one, the other one was exchanged by a later Japanese player. Therefore, even if Su Tong went on a shopping spree later, he could not redeem this prop. Faced with Chang Wahen's regretful tone, Su Tong was keenly aware of something and looked at Chang Wahen sideways. "You said there are only two of these props." "Yes, only two." Chang Wogo said with certainty, because he paid special attention to this prop at that time, so he knew the quantity of the prop very well. However, this prop was very expensive. Chang Wogo was among 4 people at the time. After discussion, the 4 of them agreed to exchange it. One piece was given to the rich team's hill. Later, when they went to exchange it, they found that the prop had disappeared. Apparently they were exchanged for the protons from the Japanese side. Gao Zhou had already told Su Tong these things before, but now that Su Tong heard the whole story again, he felt strange in his heart. There were 4 of us at that time. Apart from Xiao Shan, there was one person. Where were the others? Died. Chang Wogo said with certainty, because he killed this person. After Xiao Shan left, they found that the number of alliance points deducted every day suddenly decreased a lot. Only then did they realize that the 3 of them shared the alliance points, and the rate of consumption was also the same for 3 people. So Chang was free to take action and kill the other party. Speaking of this matter, Chang Wogo didn't feel any guilt on his face. Survival is the first rule, and anyone else would do it. If the person who resurrected the corpse was Gao Zhou, the other 2 members of the rich team would also attack him. He did this without telling Gao Zhou, and fell into a deep sleep after that. He had no chance to explain it to Gao Zhou, so even Gao Zhou only knew about it at this moment. Su Tong was not concerned about this, but asked, "Are you sure you killed the other party?" "Sure. I have his prop booklet in my hand." Faced with Chang Liuzhu's affirmation, Su Tong took a deep breath and figured out many issues at once. "Wait for me here, I'll be right back." After Su Tong finished speaking, he had no time to explain. After turning the nightmare bone ring on his finger, the figure gradually disappeared into the air. Back to reality again. There are not many families living in the Kowloon walled city anymore. People's sense of uneasiness is getting stronger and stronger. Many old people who were originally unwilling to leave have begun to pack their luggage. It is estimated that it will not be long before the Kowloon walled city will become a dead city. Ding! You have completed the side mission. The unspeakable dream-haired villain used props to enter the cave 3 times, and your alliance points have increased by 30%. After receiving the reminder of the mission, Su Tong did not dare to delay at all. The time outside was not synchronized with the cave sky. He had to turn back as soon as possible when he turned the nightmare bone ring again and entered the cave world. Su Tong found that he appeared on the 5th floor this time, and tried to send a message to Gao Zhou and the others, the points should not be so important now. You should hide them first. I will find you later. Fortunately, it's much stronger than before. You must be careful. The rules here were changed very strangely by Mao Suifeng. Gao Zhou responded very quickly this time. Su Tong closed the team channel and walked towards the fourth floor. The corridor was very quiet, not as lively as before. Speaking of which, it should be like a night in the cave. But I don't know if it's because Dong Tian is already in line with reality at this moment, or because Mao Suifeng has modified the rules of Dong Tian, but these living people have not been forcibly kicked out of Dong Tian. Baga, why do you need us to do these dirty jobs? At this time, there was an unpleasant curse in the corridor, causing Su Tong's feet to freeze in place. The voice sounded far away, but it was heard very clearly in the empty corridor. He pricked up his ears and listened carefully, and sure enough he heard someone talking in the distance. Nakamura-kun, now is not the time to complain. Complete the task as soon as possible. As long as the cave sky is connected with reality, the world will be ours. I don't think so. The relationship between that bastard Sakuragi and old ghost Mansai is extraordinary. We are just cannon fodder. The conversation between the two people was very clear. Su Tong heard it clearly and was shocked. It's a Japanese player. These guys are also coming in. The time they entered the cave this time was a temporary decision, one day earlier than originally planned. I don't know whether it was a coincidence or... Su Tong took a deep breath and quietly followed the sound. I saw two sneaky shadows squatting on the ground at the end of the corridor. Su Tong already had the bonus of dark vision, and the pharmacist specially added the human-faced owl potion when he came in. They were far apart, but he could clearly see their movements. They saw a dark green iron box in front of them, and at this moment they were carefully taking out the contents of the box. What is that? A statue of God. Su Tong looked at the object that the two men took out, which was wrapped in a thick layer of red cloth. He could vaguely see the outline of a human figure, and then suddenly remembered that in the information given to him by Akimaru, the main mission of the Japanese player, it seems to be summoning something. The two stood the thing in the corridor, and then carefully unwrapped the red cloth on it, revealing a black stone statue from under the red cloth. The stone statue is completely black, but its shape is unflattering. A human face, but the body of a beast, with 6 arms spread out, and a magic weapon hanging on each arm. What is creepy is that these magic tools are clearly parts of a person. Human heads, severed arms, internal organs, and even that indescribable thing were held in the palms of both hands. Under the stone statue, there are 3 young girls crawling. Such a weird statue doesn't look like a good thing. Not to mention Su Tong, even the 2 Japanese players felt their scalps tingling when they saw it. The more they looked at it, the more evil they felt. Nakamura-kun, our mission is completed. Let's leave quickly. My heartbeat is inexplicably speeding up. I always feel like something is happening. Ueno urged. Nakamura also felt that it was better to leave as soon as possible, so the two of them turned around and left without looking back. In the empty corridor, the footsteps of the 2 people became more and more rapid. Neither of them dared to look back, as if there was something terrible hidden in the darkness behind them. Just as the 2 hurriedly walked to the corner, suddenly, a dazzling cold light suddenly illuminated the corridor in the darkness. Not good. Nakamura's expression suddenly changed, and he held out 2 strange-shaped scimitars in front of him. The 2 scimitars intertwined, forming a golden barrier in front of Nakamura, but he still underestimated Su Tong's long-awaited killing blow. In the cold light, the contours of the blazing pure yang sword emerged, and the blade cut through the barrier with almost no hindrance. Nakamura felt his arms light up, and blood spurted out in an instant. In his shocked eyes, the arms and scimitar were neatly cut in half. Get away! At the critical moment, a huge wave of energy burst out from Ueno's body. While knocking Nakamura away, It quickly hit Su Tong, who was hiding in the shadows. Boom! Suddenly, a violent explosion echoed throughout the corridor, and thick dust and black hair floated in the air. Let's go! Seeing that his companion was seriously injured, Ueno quickly pulled Nakamura and fled quickly. Dragon Beaming Talisman. Just at this time, a golden light flew out from the darkness and quickly wrapped around Ueno. Then a dazzling electric light exploded on Ueno. In an instant, Ueno let out a scream, and his skin and flesh were torn apart by the electric light and roasted. Of coke. Then a sword light struck Ueno's chest. Puff. Blood spurted out, and Ueno didn't even see who the other party was until he died. Looking at this scene, Nakamura suddenly felt a chill in his heart. He suddenly thought of the person Sakuragi mentioned. His expression suddenly changed. The moment he turned around, he activated all his escape skills and turned into an afterimage and ran back quickly. Nakamura was moving very fast, but at this moment, a blurry outline in the darkness stood in front of him. A huge silhouette could be seen with 6 arms dancing in the air, and a fair face poked out from the darkness, staring at Nakamura with compassion. "You are destined to be my Buddha." As the words fell, 6 arms shook. Nakamura's pupils suddenly tightened. He looked at the palm falling in front of him. He didn't even have time to scream. His eyes suddenly went dark and he completely lost consciousness. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 877. I can only say that these 2 people are unlucky. They had carefully checked the 5th floor when they arrived, and only after making sure that no one was ambushing on the 5th floor did they dare to place the stone statue here with confidence. But they didn't expect that Su Tong would suddenly come to kill them. Sakuragi Sime has repeatedly warned Japanese players that once they encounter Su Tong, they should not have any delusions. The first thought is to escape as soon as possible. Strictly speaking, masters of the Dao slaying realm should not appear in front of players of their level. The gap is too big. Unless they are certified players above level 4, they have almost no ability to resist. Su Tong killed Ueno with a sword, reached out to grab Ueno's body, and held the opponent's prop book in his hand. He threw it into the prop book before he had time to look at the contents, and looked at the corridor in front of him warily. The feeble scream just now should be from the guy who escaped, but now he can no longer see the other person's aura. Instead, there was a chaotic and complicated evil desire surging deep in the corridor. Su Tong lowered his eyes slightly, holding the pure yang sword in one hand, and his muscles all over his body were tense, like a leopard ready to go. When the black shadow gradually approached, he raised his hand and used a thunderbolt. The lightning tore through the darkness, and Su Tong's figure followed closely behind. Cut. The sword energy surges, the pure sun is like fire, and the thunder and lightning follows it. With the power of thunder, it kills everything in front of it that blocks it. Su Tong's sword, combined with the thunder method, is in perfect harmony with the power of heaven and earth, and has the power to open up heaven and earth. It is like a natural nemesis to deal with this kind of evil heretic. The face of the demon was reflected in the electric light. The eyes of the golem are a crystal red color, like rose petals with dew in the morning. The facial features on the male and female faces are well proportioned, but the smile hanging at the corner of the mouth always has a sense of saying, "The evil spirit does not come out." The 3 naked women under the demon statue made charming sounds, disturbing people's minds as if they had some kind of magic power. Facing Su Tong's galloping sword light, a diamond-shaped chain javelin as thin as a little finger in the demon's hand suddenly flew up. The diamond-shaped chain javelin seemed to be alive, standing upright, just like a real spear forged from hundreds of refined steel. Just as hard, it hit Su Tong's sword head-on. Boom! Boom! Boom. The golem's hand shook slightly, and for a moment the javelin was as fast as a storm. It hit Su Tong's sword blade dozens of times, and finally shattered the incoming sword light. Then another hand waved, and a human head flew upwards. The bloody head roared in mid-air, and its appearance was somewhat similar to that of the golem. This guy is a god. Su Tong was shocked when he saw this. He had seen a way to become a god in a book. He sacrificed his own flesh and blood, sealed all his emotions and desires in his body, and then chopped his own flesh and blood into pieces, becoming a god instantly. It's just that this method of becoming a god is extremely bloody and often requires a large number of human sacrifices. Even if it becomes a god, it is just obscene, and the person who comes is just a clone, not a descendant of the godhead, and Su Tong has no fear at all. He didn't care why these devils put this guy here, since he encountered it, he simply destroyed it. When Su Tong thought of this, a layer of vermilion fire suddenly appeared on the pure yang sword in his hand. Pyrophilia. The sword edge slashed down fiercely, and with a swishing swish, the red fire in front of him slapped on all sides, making a roaring and striking sound like the waves crashing on the shore. Facing the red fire from Su Tong's sword, the head was instantly engulfed in the sea of flames, but before being incinerated, he vomited a blood curse and cast a curse. For a moment, Su Tong's energy flickered, and he intuitively felt that something had hit his luck, so he looked up. His luck was entangled by a black energy, and the black energy turned into a dark python, opening its mouth to swallow up his luck. At this time, the 3 copper coins suppressing his luck trembled slightly, and the 3 copper coins emitted a green light. They wanted to suppress the big snake, but judging from the situation, they were obviously no match for the big snake, and they were already in danger. It's a spell, you want to affect my luck. Seeing this, Su Tong snorted coldly, if you want to eat it, I will kill you. Blessings from the immortal fortune, Su Tong decisively activated the title skill. Blessing of Immortal's Destiny Dice. It consumes 30 script points. After activation, you can summon a Destiny Dice. After you throw the dice, you will get the life of the fairy for you to sublimate according to the number you throw. Duration, 30 minutes. Cooling time, 8 hours. I saw a wisp of white smoke rising slowly above my head. The white smoke billowed and transformed into a round, fat elf. This little guy was round and looked like his second soul. His pink skin looked like he had stepped out of a cartoon. The fat elf held a dice in his hand and tossed it casually. After rolling around in mid-air, the dice actually stopped at 6 o'clock. Seeing such a big score, Su Tong's mouth twitched, not knowing whether to cry or laugh. After all, the better the luck, the faster his chi will burn out. But at this moment, after receiving the blessing from Immortal Fu, Su Tong's luck, which was originally entangled by the death curse, suddenly increased and his luck showed a red color. Under the impact of this luck, 3 copper coins suddenly glowed with different colors. These 3 copper coins represented blessing, wealth, and longevity respectively. A large amount of luck poured into it, and the 3 copper coins actually turned into 3 figures standing in Su Tong's luck. The 3 heavenly officials of happiness, prosperity, and longevity. Not even Su Tong was shocked. With such luck, one would have a lucky star. The ancestral tomb was filled with smoke, and he actually summoned 3 heavenly officials to come at the same time. Boom! I saw the old immortal man on crutches, raised the crutch in his hand, and struck the snake's head with a stick. The sky-reaching black snake did not even scream, but disappeared without a trace. What this stick smashed was a spell, and the caster of the spell could not escape the backlash. Suddenly there was a muffled sound, and a big dent was made in the head of the demon statue in front of him. Its eyes were like poisonous snakes, glaring at Su. Child. Obviously Su Tong's move caused the demon to suffer a big loss. The battle over luck was one that waxed and waned, and Su Tong's luck increased dramatically, which invisibly defeated the golem's luck a lot. The demon statue that had suffered a big loss no longer had the same relaxed expression as before. Instead, it looked more like a beast that had been touched with reverse scales. Suddenly, magnificent magic smoke rose, the surrounding space changed, and the demon statue in front of him instantly transformed. Like a giant reaching the sky, he raised his 6 arms and rolled up a force that tore through the void, trying to completely kill Su Tong. "This trick of yours can only scare others, it's useless to me." Su Tong's words are by no means false. He is a land god. Although theoretically speaking, he is on the same level as this inferior evil god, but his level is much higher than him. I am a person who has attained the Tao of the Genba Sutra. Although he is very watery, he is also a land god of the Genba Sutra. The other party's tricks are naturally invisible in front of Su Tong. If it had been earlier, he would have needed to put in some effort to break through the opponent's spell, but now it is completely different. Sumi seal. Su Tong squeezed the seal with his hand, and the world around him was reversed. Su Tong's figure and the surrounding space seemed to be infinitely enlarged, while the originally huge body of the demon quickly shrank. Sumi hides mustard seeds, and mustard seeds feed Sumi. This seal is one of the most powerful magical powers in Buddhism. It cannot be practiced unless it is the top Buddhist power of the enlightened Arhat. But Su Tong learned this method directly with the help of Kaibao merit bamboo. Time suddenly reversed, and Su Tong's sword was like a divine sword that struck head-on, piercing directly through the chest of the demon. Ah! Seeing that it was no longer possible to dodge, the golem let out a low scream, and the 3 female slaves who were originally crawling under him suddenly burst into pieces, and their rich flesh and blood emitted a blood-red curse under the golem's destruction. With no way to save his life, he simply gave it a try, hoping to use this vicious blood curse to kill Su Tong together. However, Su Tong turned the seal in his hand, pinched the Vajra seal, and the Vajra seal appeared between his eyebrows. These 2 magical powers were activated at the same time. Su Tong's whole body was bathed in golden light, and the Vajra Dharma appeared behind him. The Buddha's light pecked his eyes, and a Vajra Dharma of the great god appeared. Emerging in the light of the Buddha, he recited the Diamond Sutra, Vajraprajnaparamita. The blood curse hit, but he couldn't get close to Su Tong, and was directly thrown away by a golden light. Boom! Suddenly the demon statue exploded into pieces, and a black shadow flew up from the shattered demon statue. The distorted face of the demon statue could be vaguely seen in the black shadow. It was obvious that it had already held a grudge against Su Tong. "Now that you're here, don't leave." How could Su Tong let him go? He put away the pure yang sword in his hand and bowed heavily to the black shadow with both hands. "Pay homage to Shankao." The black shadow instantly staggered in mid-air, almost knocked to pieces by this huge force as if struck by lightning. Certainly. Before he could recover, Su Tong had a mirror in his hand, which was the fixing space mirror. Special Skill 1, Fixed Space. It consumes 50 script points. After activation, the target will be frozen for 3-1 seconds, depending on the opponent's physical strength. If the opponent's physical strength is 20% stronger than the user's, this skill will be invalid. Note, if you receive any damage during catalepsy, you must resume action immediately. The mirror light was aimed at the black shadow, and now the black shadow was completely unable to move. Dark light surged, and a twisted face appeared in the mirror, letting out a wailing sound of hatred. Maybe he never dreamed that Su Tong would have so many tricks. It's just right. It's been a long time since I sent my master some achievements. I'll give you a ride. Su Tong said that a door appeared behind him. The door slowly opened, and there was a dark atmosphere inside. Su Tong casually threw it inside. After the demon fell into the gate and found that he had escaped from the shackles of the bronze mirror, he still wanted to escape. As soon as he started to move, there was a sound of wind above his head, and he saw an embroidered shoe falling down, and he immediately stepped on it and moved. No. Seeing the door close in front of him, the golem let out a strange moan, then turned around to look. The golem's heart skipped a beat when he saw Master Shuigui and others behind him staring at him with smiles. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shuigan Xiao. Chapter 878. After solving the golem, Su Tong took out Wenou's prop book. After taking a look at the opponent's prop card, I randomly picked one that looked pretty good, and with the remaining opportunity, I directly chose the opponent's script score. There are also an additional 1,200 alliance points. It can be seen that the Japs players have been unwilling to take the initiative during this period. As expected, they are all immersed in crazy tasks. Hey, I'm so upset. After taking a look at the luck above his head, the heavenly officials gave him blessings. The three heavenly officials were sitting on their own luck, and for a moment, their luck turned out to be a purple cloud. This kind of luck is so rare, no, it should be said that it is almost impossible to happen. The three heavenly officials of fortune, wealth, and longevity give blessings. If you get any one of them, you can turn misfortune into good luck and have everything you wish for. Not to mention that I don't know where my ancestral tomb is. Even if I blow up my ancestral tomb, I can't invite these three heavenly officials to bless me at the same time. All I can say is that this time it was a coincidence, or maybe it was because he was indeed destined to die, but there was another possibility. Goddess. This girl has too many secrets hidden in her body. The last time she invited her grandpa, this time she casually gave her 6 pieces of money. Every time it seems ordinary, but every time it is just right. The master's wife took this little girl with her and adopted her as her goddaughter. She knew that the master's wife would never be so kind. There is only one explanation for all this, and that is that the goddess is really a fairy. It seems that we still need to find a chance to see if we can find out the origin of the goddess. It's a pity that with such incredible luck, I can't appear in front of the casino gate on time. Su Tong secretly regretted that with the presence of the three heavenly officials, if he entered the exhibition casino, whatever the bullshit feng shui pattern was, he would be a scumbag. I am afraid that even if he sneezed, he would make the casino owner faint in tears in the toilet. But Su Tong then thought, if that was the case, why not take a chance to go to the temple behind and see what Mao Suifeng was up to? Upon thinking of this, Su Tong immediately turned around and walked downstairs. With three heavenly officials in charge, Su Tong instantly realized what cheating luck is. Walking all the way downstairs, I didn't encounter any monsters. When they arrived at the first floor, a figure stumbled out of the corner and bumped into Su Tong. When their eyes met, they were both stunned for a moment. Immediately following Su Tong's gaze, he noticed the sword in this guy's hand. He immediately raised his brows and raised a sinister smile on his lips. Wasn't this a gift of points? Brother, please make a big sword. As he spoke, Su Tong summoned the pure yang sword, shrank his feet to the ground, and appeared in front of the opponent in a flash. He waved the long sword in his hand. The opponent was obviously seriously injured, and he had no power to parry against Su Tong. He was in a hurry. He raised the sword in his hand to block it in front of his chest. It's just that he underestimated the pure yang sword in Su Tong's hand. The sword's edge roared and cut without any skill. The Ikemonji Tadeki was suddenly cut into 2 pieces under the sword's edge. Now the man couldn't even, there was no chance to activate the prop card before it was cut in half by Su Tong's sword. In the past, Su Tong felt that if he walked around casually, he might encounter a few more of them. You're here. At this time, a figure came around the corner. It was the eldest princess who had separated from Su Tong. It turned out that the eldest princess was chasing the opponent all the way to the first floor, but she didn't want to be killed by Su Tong's sword. When Su Tong saw the eldest princess, he immediately felt at ease, great, I was worried that you wouldn't adapt to the new rules here. At this moment, all my wishes come true. If God helps me, I feel like good things will happen wherever I go. I felt something was wrong as soon as I came in, so I hid in room 404 on the first floor. After looking at it for a while, I almost understood. The eldest princess talked about her own experience. It was probably a coincidence. This Japanese player seemed to be performing some kind of mission, and she happened to see him. When they fought, the opponent's strength was only at the Taoist level, and he was played like a mouse by the eldest princess. After waiting for a long time, Su Tong Eijian was finally sent to see the king of hell in a daze. After saying that, she looked at Su Tong's luck, and her expression suddenly changed. Why did your luck become like this? You have never seen blessings from the three officials of fortune, wealth, and longevity. Su Tong raised his head and looked proud. When the eldest princess saw this, she stamped her feet angrily. Are you seeking death? Don't you think you can't die quickly enough? As he spoke, he pinched Su Tong with anger, but when he pinched Su Tong's arm, he found that the back of Su Tong's hand had become very greasy, like a fat man who hadn't taken a bath in more than 10 days. Seeing this, the eldest princess's face immediately turned ugly. The immortal's body should have been pure and flawless, but oil stains appeared on Su Tong's body, indicating that his 5 degenerations had become more and more serious. If the curse cannot be broken as soon as possible, he will definitely die soon. Su Tong didn't know this truth, but he didn't have many choices. Instead of crying and being cautious, it was better to rush through it singing loudly. If he really wanted to die, at least Su Tong could give himself a satisfactory way to die. Gao Zhou and the others are on the 4th floor, in the second to last room in the west corridor. While there is no movement, you should find a way to meet them first. In addition, this is the rule of the cave they found. Pay attention to the hairs in the corridor. Careful. Su Tong wrote the rules summarized by Gao Zhou and others on a piece of paper, handed it to the eldest princess, and expressed his intention to go to the back of Kowloon walled city to find Mao Suifeng. The eldest princess originally wanted to go with Su Tong, but Su Tong refused. He pointed to the luck above his head and pretended to be relaxed and said, "Don't worry, if I want to die, I will die because of the 5 declines of heaven and man. No one can do anything to me until my luck is gone." Seeing Su Tong's firm attitude, the eldest princess could only give up the idea of going with him. After taking the note, she walked towards the stairs without looking back. She didn't look back until she reached the corner of the stairs. "Come back soon," he said, and went upstairs without looking back. After seeing off the eldest princess, Su Tong did not forget to talk to Gao Zhou in the team channel, and then got up and walked behind the Kowloon walled city. Unlike such a prosperous city in reality, behind the Kowloon walled city is a completely barren wilderness. When Su Tong walked out of the gate of the walled city, he saw a black building standing on the ground from a distance. As they walked forward, they saw corpses, bones and flesh all over the ground, and some broken limbs and arms were still weakly squirming. These minced meats should have been caught as tributes from those who failed to turn in the money on time. But when Su Tong took a closer look, a stench hit his face. The strong odor was nauseating. The building in front of me is even more disgusting. A very small house, just like a landowner's hut on the roadside, but this house is not built with bricks, stones, and cement, but with human flesh, blood, and bones. Dense black hair twisted into a steel frame, penetrating the flesh and blood, maintaining the shape of the house. When Su Tong stepped forward, all the eyeballs on the house were staring at him. Each eyeball revealed a strong hatred, which made Su Tong feel that his luck was shaking slightly. Fortunately, his luck was at its peak, and there were 3 heavenly officials sitting in charge, so this level of resentment could not affect him. He took 2 more steps forward, and suddenly the soil around him rolled, and black hairs sprouted from the ground crazily. The land was pushed aside, and the mutilated corpses poked out from the soil, exuding even stronger malice and resentment. Only then did Su Tong see Mao Suifeng's figure clearly. He was seen sitting cross-legged, as if in trance, and his body was covered with thick layers of black hair. It was very different from the first time I saw him. At this moment, Mao Suifeng exuded a strong death aura, and his face, arms, calves, and other visible parts were completely covered by black spells. Just looking at these charms makes me feel dizzy and nauseated. Even a land god like Su Tong does not dare to stare at them for too long. Spear Suifeng. Su Tong tried to call his name softly. Mao Suifeng's body trembled slightly, and he opened his eyes numbly. The word death appeared in his black pupils. Just looking at Su Tong almost caused the 5 degenerations in him to explode. Su Tong hurriedly took a step back and quickly took out a ball of incense and sprinkled it on his body. Only then did he suppress the impending outbreak of the 5 decays of heaven and man. Mao Suifeng, do you still remember me? After your mother got the few silver coins you left, she cried very sadly. I have asked people to take care of her. Is there anything you want to tell her? Su Tong tried to play this emotional card, trying to see what Mao Suifeng's attitude was towards him now. Mao Suifeng's expression was dull. It was only when Su Tong mentioned his mother that his face was slightly touched. But it was just a little touching. Soon the face became as cold as a clay sculpture. Seeing that Mao Suifeng was silent, Su Tong could only continue, your mother cares about you very much, but now Dongtian is connecting with the outside world, you will kill her if you do this. Mao Shui was stunned for a moment, then shook his head, this has nothing to do with me. I just want to find that door. The changes in the cave were caused by another guy. Mansai Musashi Gen. Su Tong's heart sank, it is indeed this old guy. Those Japs players should be acting according to his instructions. It wasn't him either, they did it together. As Mao Suifeng spoke, he looked at the Kowloon walled city behind Su Tong, they are in the basement. You can go find them, or wait for them to come to you. They. Su Tong immediately realized something, but before he could continue to ask, Mao Suifeng's face gradually became distorted, and his pupils trembled fiercely, as if some force was forcibly twisting his body. A terrifying death energy surged out of him, and the bones on the ground and the temple in front of him all let out painful screams as if they were alive. At this time, the black hair twisted into a tentacle, lifting the clothes on Mao Suifeng's chest. Only then did Su Tong see that on Mao Suifeng's chest, a shrine was rooted in his muscles. At this moment, a pair of scarlet eyes in the shrine were staring at him, using the body of Mao Suifeng to say to Su Tong, if you can kill them, I can undo the death curse on you. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 879. Another Shrine. Seeing the shrine on Mao Suifeng's chest, Su Tong's heart shivered, and he finally understood why Mao Suifeng had changed so much. There are 4 of Mansai Musashi Gen's bodies. One of them was destroyed by me, and one was parasitic on Guo Xiang's body. In addition, I killed the old immortal Wu Sheng and this shrine in front of me. Finally, we have 7 shrines. Su Tong thought about the 7 shrines, and he had already destroyed 2. However, although Guo Xiang was taken away by the evil god, the shrine was not in her body. It may not be easy to find this guy's shrine. Although destroying the 7 shrines was the main mission, Su Tong still looked embarrassed at this moment. You know, my current condition is not good. I may die at any time. If you want me to help you, first help me undo the death curse on my body. Hey. Hearing Su Tong's words, Mao Suifeng in front of him burst into a hoarse sneer, yes, as long as you eat this piece of meat, I will help you break the death curse. Mao Suifeng reached out and took out a bloody piece of meat from the shrine and handed it to Su Tong. This piece of flesh and blood looks very fresh, but when you get closer, you can smell the pungent stench on it, and you know that this thing is definitely not a good thing. This old ghost is too thief. The old ghost on Mao Suifeng's chest was so cunning that he offered to break the curse, but the other party instead threatened him with a piece of flesh and blood. If you don't eat it yourself, it means you are not sincere enough. If you eat it yourself, who knows what problems may arise. What if Guo Xiang was taken away like this? Seeing that Su Tong was unmoved, Mao Suifeng had a sarcastic look on his face, but said in a very gentle tone, I know you don't believe me, but I don't dare to believe you rashly. Unlock the death curse. The burden is too heavy for me. If you take advantage of it, I will definitely die. After saying that, his voice changed. Let's take a step back. I can help you unlock part of the death curse. Every time you kill a guy, I will help you unlock a layer. This can help you slow down the death curse of decline. Mao Suifeng spoke sincerely, as if he showed his utmost sincerity. However, at this moment, Su Tong snatched the piece of flesh and blood from Mao Suifeng's hand. When the flesh and blood was taken, it was like ice and snow meeting an iron plate, suddenly melting into a puddle of black water, and getting into Su Tong's body. Suddenly, Su Tong's face gradually darkened, and strange curse marks appeared on his body. After these curse marks penetrated Su Tong's internal organs like tadpoles, they gradually merged with Su Tong completely. Ding! You are cursed by Chen Wangshen. You are cursed by the flesh and blood of King Chen. During the curse, you cannot leave the cave world. You have a subtle connection with the evil god King Chen. You cannot actively harm King Chen, but King Chen can directly attack your body at any time and cause you harm. Huge damage. If King Chen dies during the curse, you will also suffer fatal injuries. Hearing the prompt, Su Tong not only did not become nervous, but instead became more determined in his thoughts. He needs a thug, not a puppet. Besides, it's not that easy to seize me. The reason why Su Tong dared to be so decisive was that he concluded that Mao Suifeng was not capable of directly seizing his body. Amoda had repeatedly emphasized that seizing his body was a very risky matter. Since the opponent is sure of victory, he will not take such risky actions. If he is not careful and the boat capsizes, I am afraid it will be too late to regret it. Since you want to play, I will accompany you to the end. Su Tong's move may have been something that even Mao Suifeng didn't expect. There was a strange look on his stiff face. Aren't you afraid that I will regret it? You can try it. Su Tong raised his head, the flesh on his face was twisted together, and his two triangular eyes were filled with a cold light that caught people's attention. Anyone who was stared at would feel like a lump in the throat. Chen Wangshen was silent at this time. He had read countless people and knew very well that there would always be some madmen in this world. These guys didn't know how to respect death. Su Tong took a while to adapt, and the stinging sensation caused by the curse gradually subsided. So you are Chen Wangshen. How come I haven't heard of this god? After Su Tong absorbed the curse of flesh and blood, he looked carefully at the figure in the shrine. He had read a lot of books. Even if they were mostly memorized by rote, he could recognize many gods from the gods, Buddhas, and the underworld. He didn't listen. What did Chen Wangshen say? It's just an ancient abandoned god. There will be many gods like me in every dynasty. Some are very prosperous for a while, and some are wiped out in less than 100 days. Only a few outstanding ones are born with luck and can achieve positive results and gain approved by the imperial court. When Chen Wangshen in the shrine talks about his past, he cannot help but feel sad and melancholy about it. He was once glorious and was worshipped by 5 generations of emperors of the Chen family. At that time, he was at the peak of his powers and felt that he could hit the Yangshen Avenue in the future. But with the collapse of the Chen family, he was also knocked down from the mortal world, and eventually became an abandoned god. If the gods that the world remembers are the charming lotuses in the lotus pond, which are praised by the world for rising out of the mud and remaining unsullied, Then these abandoned gods abandoned by the times are the mud under the lotus pond that cannot be noticed by the world. Their impression was only a stench. It seems that because Su Tong absorbed his curse, Chen Wangshan's wariness towards Su Tong suddenly dropped by several levels. Now their relationship is similar to that of companionship. Su Tong cannot take the initiative to attack him. Based on this, he is in an invincible position, so he tells Su Tong about his origins. Apart from him, the Wushan Old Immortal, the Yinshan Old Mother, the Black and White God, the Bigfoot Immortal, and the Privet Immortal were all just like him, and they had their moments of glory. Now it is reduced to this situation, which is really sad. As he spoke, Chen Wangshan controlled Mao Suifeng's hand and reached into the shrine on his chest. After groping for a while, he stretched out his hand and grabbed it. It seemed that he had caught something gelatinous, and a ball of black liquid was slowly drawn out. Pulled out from the shrine. This process seemed to make Mao Suifeng very painful, and all the muscles in his body were shaking violently. After the black liquid completely separated from the shrine, Mao Suifeng casually threw it to Su Tong. Mao Suifeng's body immediately went limp, and he sat there with his body bent unnaturally, as if it had been taken away. The backbone is as weak as the backbone. After Su Tong took the mud-like thing, the black liquid opened his mouth and bit Su Tong's wrist hard. Don't resist. It needs to suck a lot of your blood before it can transfer the death curse on you to it. Chen Wangshan said weakly. Seeing this, Su Tong could only wait patiently. Fortunately, this experience of being sucked blood quickly was not unfamiliar to him. Seeing this black monster sucking bigger and bigger, it finally looked like a huge black tumor that swallowed up Su Tong's entire arm. Su Tong suddenly felt lighter all over his body, as if all the burdens in his body had been sucked away by the sky. It really works. He took a look at his skin and saw that the smell of sweat on his skin had begun to disappear, and the dust on his body was more or less spotless when the wind blew. It seems that his degenerate nature has indeed been transferred to this black sarcoma. What is this? Can it absorb even the 5 degenerates of heaven and humans? Su Tong asked Chen Wangshan. This is my stomach. Chen Wangshan's answer surprised Su Tong. He didn't expect that this dark sarcoma turned out to be his stomach. Then don't you have no stomach? Hearing Su Tong's innocent inquiry, Chen Wangshan let out a hoarse laugh and explained to Su Tong, you are under the great debilitating curse of the Black and White God, but their curse is ineffective on me, so you can be inflicted by my stomach to suck it away. If it was a true deity, I would have hid as far away from you as possible. No god in the sky or on earth would dare to approach you, let alone suck it away. How terrifying are the real 5 gods of plague. It is no exaggeration to say that they are the super great gods of plague walking in the human world. The 5 great plague gods will all come to your luck. Wherever you go, the sky is dark and the earth is dark, and the plague is rampant. All things decay and lose their vitality. At that time, not to mention being an abandoned god, even those great gods will not dare to come close to you, the broom star, and maybe even the gods from the heavens will join forces to isolate you directly. You have to kill them as soon as possible. Their wills are merging bit by bit. The longer the delay, the more terrifying their strength becomes. Recently, I have been unable to suppress them. Taking advantage of the time when the stomach bag was sucking blood, Chen Wangshan reminded Su Tong again. Then why can't you do it yourself? If the 2 of us join forces, we can definitely kill each other. Su Tong frowned and asked. Since Chen Wangshan can suppress them, his strength will naturally be higher than that of Mansai Musashi General in this case, why not take the opportunity to kill the opponent early? Regarding this question, Chen Wangshan was silent for a while before speaking, and then pointed to the pieces of meat on the ground. I don't have a complete physical body now, I need time. Okay, then just stay calm and leave the rest to me. Su Tong nodded and looked magnanimous, but with his arm wrapped in his stomach bag, he suddenly called out the props book, quietly took out something from the props book, held it in his hand, and quietly moved it towards the depths of his stomach bag. As soon as he gave it away, he thought to himself, "Consider this a gift from me. After all, my master often said that it is not polite to come back but not reciprocate." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 880. A burst of turbid air came out of his chest, and Su Tong felt relieved. Then he summoned the great Sun Ruyi furnace, and billowing life essence surged from the furnace. The arm that was almost sucked dry by Chen Wangshen's stomach bag recovered to its original state within a short time. This scene made Chen Wangshen envious. "You are indeed an earth immortal. You are truly blessed with endless blessings. But where did you learn from? I clearly feel that you are a descendant of the Golden Elixir sect, but your methods are more like entrainment. Have you learned many side spells?" As the actual controller of this cave, Chen Wangshen can observe everyone in the Kowloon walled city through the hair. Su Tong, a land god, was naturally the focus of observation. Otherwise, if he didn't understand Su Tong's strength, how could he let Su Tong act as his thug? "You know my strength so well, so it's okay for me to ask you a few things. After all, we are already grasshoppers in the same boat." However, instead of answering Chen Wangshen's question, Su Tong was keenly aware that Chen Wangshen seemed to have been secretly observing him, and instead made a request to Chen Wangshen. "Don't be nervous, I just want to find some people. For example, the people who entered the cave with me this time. Apart from the ones I have already found, how many others are there?" There is a trap hidden in Su Tong's seemingly casual words. The key to the problem is very vague, which is to see how strong Chen Wangshen Dongtian's control is. However, he also underestimated Chen Wangshen, an old guy who had lived for thousands of years. Su Tong's cleverness was clearly seen by him. But he didn't care about this matter, because Su Tong was right in saying that they were grasshoppers on the same rope now, and he also needed to show him his methods appropriately. "He, one of your friends is wandering on the second floor with a resentful demon, but they get along very well, so you don't have to worry. As for the other 4 people, they are in the 4th room on the 3rd floor on the left." 4 people. Su Tong frowned. Since there is one person on the 2nd floor, who are the 4 people on the 3rd floor? Gu Zibai, Libo, Tai Xiao, Atao. Pharmacist. "Okay, I'm going to gather people right now, and then I'll help you kill those guys." Su Tong finished speaking but did not leave, and continued to ask. "There is another question. Since you are the master of the cave, can you give me some privileges? For example, your rules and payment can be waived if possible." To Su Tong's disappointment, Chen Wangshen also expressed his helplessness. He became the master of the cave in a hurry. But these rules were settled after repeated arguments between him and Mansai Musashi. Once the Dongtian rules were settled, there was absolutely no room for change. So strictly speaking, rather than saying that he is the master of the cave, he is more like a service staff or property owner, carefully maintaining the rules of the cave. At the same time, Chen Wangshen also said that these rules are invalid for Mansai Musashi Gen, because this guy has now become a demigod and is not within the binding framework of the rules. Well, that's sad news. Su Tong rubbed his shoulder with helplessness, then turned around and walked towards the Kowloon walled city. "Help me succeed, let's go." Chen Wangshen was very satisfied with his vigorous and resolute style, and shouted to Su Tong's back, "I will give you some help at the right time." Only after Su Tong left did the ferocious expression on Mao Suifeng's face gradually return to calmness and become dull again. "Can you really control him? This man is very dangerous." Mao Suifeng looked at the direction Su Tong left and whispered to himself. "Ka." At this time, the swollen stomach bag on the ground gradually shrank, and finally shrank into a ball, and was stuffed into the shrine by Mao Suifeng again. Then there was a burst of burping in the shrine, and then he sighed sincerely, "This taste is really surprisingly delicious. I will help him keep it for the time being." After all, the death curse is not that easy to break. Without the trouble of the 5 degenerations of heaven and man, Su Tong's mental state was particularly good. "I don't know if it's because I'm lucky enough, but I didn't expect to be able to break my own death curse. Sure enough, who dares to say that luck is not a kind of strength? However, Chen Wangshen is not a good person. This guy has been around for such a long time and is already alive. I am afraid that it is not just as simple as placing a curse on himself. He will definitely have other means to prevent himself from defecting." Thinking of this, Su Tong had already prepared for the worst, but one trouble is always better than several troubles. Besides, I am not a stingy person. Thinking of this, Su Tong raised his lips slightly and silently recited the name of his good brother in his heart, Amarta. Amarta. In order to find a suitable host for you, I will sacrifice myself. Got in. Amota has been paying attention to Su Tong silently. Facing Su Tong's call, his image appeared in Su Tong's mind, but his face was extremely gloomy. "God Lord, you bastard, you actually threw my mark into this guy's stomach. Damn it, do you want me to take away a god? Do you know that this approach is very dangerous?" It turns out that the thing Su Tong threw into Chen Wangshen's stomach bag was the spiritual mark given to him by Ameta. At the critical moment, this mark made Ameta directly attack the opponent. "The blood curse on my body does not allow me to actively attack Chen Wangshen, but this curse has too many loopholes. If I don't attack, can't I call my teammates?" It was precisely based on this that Su Tong concluded that Chen Wangshen must have a way to turn defeat into victory. Danger. Facing Amota's complaints, Su Tong said with disdain, "There are no risks these days, even being a duck is risky. Aren't you a devil? Why are you so timid? It's better to let that old bitch Lilith take you back, make it into a bacon and salted fish and hang it on the wall. There is no risk at all." Amota lost his temper due to Su Tong's rebuke, and could only whisper, "But the other party is a god. If you want to take away the god, you must hit him hard. Then this isn't something you should worry about." Su Tong said as he took out an apple from the prop book and chewed it viciously, already thinking about how to deal with this guy. According to the location mentioned by Chen Wangshen, Su Tong got up and walked to the 3rd floor. He didn't know if it was a coincidence, Chen Wangshen's secret concern, or his own good luck. When Su Tong walked upstairs, the entire Kowloon walled city seemed to be sleeping, and it was as quiet and terrifying as possible. When Su Tong walked up to the 2nd floor, he looked to the left and saw a huge figure standing at the fork of the corridor in the dark corridor, as if he was asleep. What was even more strange was that Su Tong was on his back. On the top, I also saw a vague outline. Su Tong's eyesight was astonishing, and with the blessing of dark vision and human-faced owl potion, he could see clearly at a glance that the guy sitting on the weirdo's shoulder was none other than Li Bo. A person is with a resentful demon? It turns out that the person on the 2nd floor is Li Bo, but how could he be with a resentful demon? Su Tong was confused and tried to call Li Bo on the team channel. However, Li Bo did not respond directly. Instead, he sent a visual screenshot to Su Tong. There were 7 words written on the paper stained with blood: "Leave me alone. I am very safe." The 7 words were full of pride, leaving Su Tong speechless for a moment. Well, everyone else was shivering and hiding in the room. This guy not only walked struttingly in the corridor, but also had a personal bodyguard. He was indeed the son of luck and the team mascot. But since Li Bo is on the 2nd floor, the 4 people on the 3rd floor are facing each other. They should be Yaoshi, Gu Zibai, and a Tao and Tai Xiao from the Ling team. It happened to meet them first, and then let Gaozhou, Chang Wuju, and the others go downstairs. Don't worry about the mascot Li Bo, Just kill them directly and go to Wanzai Musashi Gen and others. After Su Tong made up his mind, he quickened his pace and walked to the third floor. When I walked up to the third floor, a weak spark flickered in the corridor, followed by the rapid sound of the clock. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of the clock was getting closer and closer, and wherever the sound passed, the originally dark room in the corridor gradually became bright again. Buzz. At this time, a door beside Su Tong opened quietly, and the dark room was empty and there was no one. Seeing this, Su Tong remembered Chen Wangshan's words. I will give you some help at the right time. He immediately opened the door and walked in. Just after Su Tong walked into the door opposite was quietly opened, and a pair of scarlet eyes quietly poked out from the crack in the door. Through the weak light in the room, you could see that it was a huge figure curled up at the door. Later, after scanning the door with doubtful eyes for a moment, he found that no one was outside his door, so he closed the door again in frustration. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 881. Su Tong closed the door and looked at the room. There was not even a piece of furniture in the empty room. Zitsize. At this time, the hair on the wall began to grow crazily as if it had been stimulated. Su Tong instinctively drew out the pure yang sword and stood on guard. But these hairs did not hurt him. After a period of crazy growth and rolling, they gradually formed into a ball and woven into a grass ring half a man tall, standing in front of Su Tong. In the center of the grass ring, black liquid flowed out like a whirlpool. Soon, a ball of light flashed out from the center of the vortex. Su Tong saw this and went over to take a look. He found that under the dim light, a woman was sitting in front of the dressing mirror, carefully combing her hair. However, the strange thing is that Su Tong did not see the shadow of the woman or the bloody skeleton in the mirror. Su Tong looked around, and the mirror-like vortex in front of him also changed direction with his gaze. Compared with the room I am in, the decoration in this room is particularly exquisite, with solid wood furniture, a small bed, and two particularly large wardrobes. What's weird is that there are 3 iron cages next to the table on the left, which look out of place with the exquisite furniture here. Not only that, Su Tong also noticed that there were many men's clothes thrown under the woman's bed. There were so many clothes that many of them were squeezed out of the gaps. At this time, the woman stood up, took out a white cat from the cage and put it in her arms. The white cat seemed to be afraid of the woman and kept struggling in the woman's arms. After the sharp nails scratched a shallow scar on the woman's hand, the woman's face turned cold, and the sharp nails suddenly dug into the cat's throat. Meow. Under the stinging pain, the white cat began to struggle desperately, and a black air surged out from the cat's face. In the black air, a man's face appeared, pleading in pain. But instead of the man's pleading making the woman stop, the woman became extremely excited and inserted her fingers into the white cat's body little by little. A flush appeared on the woman's face and her body shook violently. The cat's screams made Su Tong frown. The screams were coming from next door to him. Obviously, this woman was his neighbor next door. After the white cat struggled in the woman's arms for several times, it gradually turned into a ball of black ashes. When the ashes dispersed, the woman casually took a handful of money and a donation of money appeared in her hand. It turns out that this is how the money came from. After seeing the whole process clearly, Su Tong roughly understood the origin of the so-called money supply. The so-called money supply was actually the souls transformed by these resentful demons. Chen Wangshan relied on absorbing these souls to gradually strengthen his power. At this time, Su Tong's mind moved slightly. Since the mirror can see the next door, it should also be able to see other rooms. This thought arose, and as the vortex in front of him turned, the scenes inside could actually be seen in other rooms. He looked to the left and found a room with 8 or 9 people crowded in. These people gathered around the mahjong table and stared intently at the mahjong in the hands of the 4 people. 4 men were sitting on the table playing mahjong, with a dozen money on the table. One of the men seemed to have particularly good luck, and he mistook his cards. In an instant, all the dozen or so pieces of donation money went into the man's pocket, but the faces of the other 3 people turned pale. "I won't play any more, I won't play any more." One of the men stood up and wanted to escape. As soon as he stood up, the mahjong table in front of him stretched out its tentacles and dragged the man directly into the mahjong table. With the sound of machine gears turning, the table shook slightly, and 3 black money coins appeared on the mahjong table. And the vacated positions were quickly taken by others. Su Tong looked at it for a while, and realized that the evil spirit in this room was the mahjong table. The winner would receive a large amount of money, and the loser would be swallowed directly by it. It seems fair, after all, you can get more than a dozen contributions if you win one game. But Su Tong could see details that ordinary people couldn't see through the mirror in front of him. The feet of the other 3 people on the table were unknowingly firmly grasped by the tentacles of the mahjong table. Obviously, even if they won money, it is not easy to leave. Su Tong was not interested in playing mahjong, so he looked at the next house. The scene changes, and there is a child sitting on a chair in the room, holding a thick book in his hand and reading carefully. The lights and his back were reflected on the wall, and it looked like a harmonious and comfortable scene, but Su Tong always felt that something was wrong. He pushed the picture closer and looked at the book in the boy's hand, only to see that the book in the boy's hand didn't have a single word at all, but instead had a human face sewn onto the page. The man's face was talking about his life blankly, and the boy listened with interest. After he finished listening, he turned to the next page. The face on this page looked like the face of an old man. The old man spoke a few words, full of principles of life, but the boy was obviously not willing to listen to this. Instead, he reached out and tore off the page, then crumpled it into a ball, put it in his mouth and ate it with a crunch. Such a weird scene makes people shudder. Even Su Tong couldn't tell for a moment whether the resentment in this room was the boy or the book in his hand. Then he looked to other rooms. At this moment, the scene in front of him suddenly went dark. Just when Su Tong thought that the room was empty and was about to change to another room, a pair of blood-red eyes opened in the darkness. The red blood light illuminated the room, and a huge black shadow gradually became clear in the room. Even when Su Tong saw the other party's body, he couldn't help but feel his heart tightening. The huge body is like a giant worm, with black liquid constantly flowing out of its body. What kind of monster is this? Su Tong frowned and saw the monster squirming, walking to the window step by step, and quietly opened a corner of the curtain, as if peeping at every move outside. There was a whisper, "Hey, when will he come out?" Curious, Su Tong put the camera close to it, and looked out through the opened curtains. His face turned dark instantly, and he saw outside the curtains, facing the door of the room where he was hiding. "This guy is staring at me." Suddenly, a chill ran down his back. Su Tong turned around and looked outside the door, his face suddenly brightening and darkening. After all, no one would feel comfortable being watched secretly by such a monster. Fortunately, the monster didn't look at it for long before he closed the curtains, turned to face the mirror hanging on the wall, twisted his huge body, and made a weird howling sound to himself. Seeing this, Su Tong really didn't want to look any further and hurriedly looked towards other rooms. At this moment, the scene turned, Su Tong's pupils suddenly tightened, and he saw 4 people sitting in front of the table in the room, all looking troubled, staring at the mirror on the table. Found it? When he saw familiar faces, Su Tong's heart moved, and he finally found Gu Zibai and the others. What surprised Su Tong was that the 4 people in the room were not what he thought. The pharmacist was not here, but another unfamiliar face. Strange, where is the pharmacist? Looking at the 4 unfamiliar faces in front of him, Su Tong felt something was wrong. The pharmacist was not there. Didn't this guy enter the cave? Then he looked around again and saw that among the other three people in the room, apart from Tai Xiao and Atao, there was another unfamiliar face, who was obviously another member of the Ridge team. Could this person be Xiao Shan? Seeing this person, Su Tong suddenly felt a murderous intention in his heart. Akimaru said that there was a traitor on their side, and he thought it was the pharmacist, but it turned out to be not him. Since he was not a pharmacist, the identity of the traitor became a mystery. He thought it might be Li Bo, but then he thought it was wrong. Li Bo's strength was too low and he was only a peripheral member of the team. He would be the traitor, regardless of the script arrangements. It is impossible for him to choose on his own. As for Gao Zhou and the others, based on their lifelong friendship, if it was a script arrangement, they would also find a way to reveal the information to themselves. So if the traitor is not from their team, he must be someone from the Ling team. Among them, the suspicion of this hill is very high. Since they were resurrected, why not meet up with their team members? He originally thought that it was Xiao Shan who was torn into pieces in the morgue, but at that time Guo Xiang and the others said that they had not received any information about Xiaoshan's death. So where did the hill go during this time? Such a person is hiding in the dark. He is not a traitor, and he is definitely not a good person. My own inference is by no means an unreasonable conjecture. The biggest evidence lies in Xiaoshan's face. His thin face looked a bit like he hadn't eaten well for a while, but that was all. Look at the looks on the faces of Gao Zhou and Chang Wugu, and then look at the appearance of this guy. There are no injuries at all. How did he survive in the cave? Su Tong didn't think that Xiao Shan was stronger than the two of them, not to mention that the two of them were protected by Maida, even though they were as embarrassed as tramps. Therefore, he concluded that Xiao Shan was not in the cave at all during this time. Maybe the body that was cut into pieces was not Xiao Shan, but a player from the Japs club, who deliberately left a piece of cloth to mislead people, so that people would think he had been killed by the Japs. Tai Xiao, how long are we going to wait here? Gu Zibai asked with a frown. You have also seen that the situation outside is too chaotic now. Just wait. Iron Hand said. When Gu Zibai heard this, he squinted his eyes at the hill beside him. You were here before. What is going on here? Why don't you know at all? Originally, he, Tai Xiao and Atao met on the second floor. Gu Zibai originally wanted to take them to the fourth floor to meet Gao Zhou and the others. As a result, as soon as they reached the third floor, they met Xiao Shan. What was even more troublesome was that there were two monsters following Xiao Shan. The four of them could only follow Xiao Shan to this room. As soon as they entered, Gu Zibai noticed something was wrong and urged them to leave several times, but none of the three seemed to have any intention of leaving. Facing Gu Zibai's question at this moment, Xiao Shan smiled bitterly and said, after I failed to revive the soul through corpse, I was completely confused. I only remembered that Mansai Musashigen controlled the entire cave, and then a large number of ghosts appeared here. These ghosts slowly they turned into these monsters. After hearing Xiaoshan's answer, Gu Zibai couldn't tell whether it was true or false for a while, but some things were similar to what he knew from the captain. The situation in Xiaoshan is like this. I know you are anxious, but since we are allies, we should work together. In this way, after the meeting calms down outside, we will go and meet your captain. Tai Xiao assured Gu Zibai. When Gu Zibai heard this, he had nothing to say, so he simply closed his eyes and waited. But the four of them didn't know that Su Tong had clearly heard the conversation between them. These people are lying. Through the mirror in front of him, Su Tong watched with cold eyes, examining everyone's expressions when they spoke and were silent. Although I don't know what Tai Xiao is thinking, they are obviously stalling for time. Especially for Tai Xiao, Xiaoshan's words were just fine for tricking Lao Bai, but facing Su Tong, he was completely full of flaws. Boom, boom, boom. At this time, there was a sound of a watch in the corridor. Su Tong's ears moved and he heard the sound of the door being unlocked. Huh? Why is the alarm sound so fast this time? The last update last time was at least an hour, but this time Su Tong felt that it was not even half an hour. He looked in the mirror in front of him and found that the resentful demons who were originally in the room had begun to walk out of his room. What's even weirder is that the expressions of these resentful demons became very angry, as if something had stimulated them. Su Tong used the mirror to quickly look at the corridor, and to his surprise, someone appeared at the end of the corridor. Shuxia-kun. Are you sure we are okay? Taro Kuroishi looked at the door that was opened in front of him, and the gong in his hand was trembling. Under the tree, Akamoto held up a white sail and summoned two Shikigami to guard him. Facing the inquiry from Taro Kuroishi beside him, he confidently said, "Don't worry, although the master of the cave is Chen Wangshen, these resentful demons are it is to obey the orders of our ancestors." But why can't our ancestors kill Chen Wangshen and make us so passive? Taro Kuroishi asked. Under the tree, Akamoto thought to himself, how could I know, but he yelled angrily, asshole, how can you and I be able to figure out the thoughts of our ancestors? Shushita Akamoto was actually scared to his core of Mansai Musashi Gen. Last time he and Sakuragi Sime left Mansai Musashi Gen and ran away. They thought that after entering the cave world this time, Mansai Musashi Gen would definitely make their lives worse than death. Unexpectedly, instead of blaming them, Master Wanzai gave them a lot of good things. After fusing the power of the three gods, Master Wanzai has become a human god. This is definitely good news for them. Of course, Shushita Akamoto also knew in his heart that when the main mission was completed, it would be time for Master Mansai to settle accounts with them. But what does that matter? As long as they complete the main mission, they can return to reality at any time. For them, this is just a script world. Why are they? The last time Su Tong entered Dongtian to fight against Mansai Musashi Gen, he saw Akamoto under the tree and recognized this Japanese player at a glance. What Su Tong didn't expect was that the residents around him who opened the door didn't attack them. It wasn't until he heard the conversation between the two that he understood what was going on. What are they doing here? Su Tong suddenly felt a bad feeling in his heart, and looked at Guzibai's room again. His heart trembled. These guys want to kill someone with a borrowed knife. I saw the two people saying this, beating the gongs in their hands and walking forward. Kaka. The residents in the room were stimulated by the gong and walked out of the room one after another, but they could only watch the two people and did not take action against them. However, some residents in the rooms did not open the door, but lay behind the windows and watched indifferently. Faced with these residents who were unwilling to cooperate, the two of them did not dare to force themselves. When they came, Master Wanzai had already told them that there were some very powerful demons here. If they were unwilling to cooperate, they should not force them. Otherwise, even if they held the gong in their hands, they would still be dead. Let's go, do me a favor, I can give you enough reward. Shuxia Akamoto took out a bulging money bag from the prop book. When he opened it, black gas emitted from it, and he saw that it was actually a bag full of money. When these resentful demons saw the money, the anger in their eyes gradually softened. Akamoto, under the tree, handed the donation money to Taro Kuroishi and took the gong from Taro Kuroishi's hand. You give the money to them. Taro Kuroishi nodded, then took the bag and sent the money up. Everyone, this is just a little bit of kindness. We will give you an extra amount of money after the project is completed. Akamoto said with a smile under the tree nearby. Then he knocked on the gong in his hand and led the people to the room where Guzibai and the others were. Ha ha ha, catch them all in one fell swoop. Kuroishi Taro's face showed joy. Don't be careless. According to the insider, the opponent is very strong and is in the same team as that guy. Let's not attack easily later. We hide behind and let these resentful demons come up. When this guy can't hold on any longer, Let's do it again. Take action and fight quickly. Akamoto said seriously under the tree. That person is the guy named Tong Yanwuji. Taro Kuroishi was stunned for a moment, and unconsciously slowed down his pace. The last time Tianli passed through the tribulation, he also watched from a distance. Akimaru wouldn't be able to take any advantage in the opponent's hands. If he were to be recruited, the two of them would definitely not be opponents. Seeing Taro Kuroishi slowing down, Akamoto looked down at this guy under the tree beside him, but he encouraged him, "What are you afraid of? Akimaru and Sakuragi-kun are waiting nearby. Once if the situation is not right, come back to support us at any time, no matter how we surround the spot and call for reinforcements." Taro Kuroishi nodded, but said disapprovingly, "The two of us together are the bait for fishing." It's just that Kuroishi Taro didn't dare to say these words, and he had to make a matching expression on his face. Little did they know that behind the door the two of them passed through at this moment, Su Tong was using the power of Chen Wangshen to silently watch their every move. He could hear the conversation between the two of them verbatim. "Surround the site for reinforcements." Su Tong took out the Chunyang sword from the props book. The cold light of the blade shone on his face, and his eyes gradually became sharp. "Listen." On the other side, Guzibai suddenly raised his head, and a warrior's intuition suddenly made him feel a strong sense of uneasiness. The three iron hands looked at each other and immediately became alert upon seeing this. "It should be fine, I'll go take a look." Xiao Shan stood up and wanted to walk to the door, but Guzibai beat him to it. He walked to the door, reached out and opened the window and glanced outside. At this glance, even if Guzibai was brave enough, he was startled. "I saw a dense crowd of people standing outside the door." Grass. Immediately, Guzibai took out the wugo from the prop book and stood sideways in front of the door. He looked back at the three iron hands and shouted in the team channel, "Boss, something happened. The people in the Ling group are not well intentioned. They betrayed." Guzibai was not a fool. Although he had no evidence, his intuition was surprisingly strong. He could see the subtle expressions of the three people just now, and he immediately suspected that something was wrong with the three of them. After shouting in the team channel, Guzibai said with a serious look on his face, "Tai Xiao, we are surrounded, move the table over quickly and push up the door first." After hearing Guzibai's words, the three of them muttered to each other a few times in the team channel, and then walked to the door pretending to be calm. "Don't worry, the rules here are, as long as you don't open the door proactively, they can't come in." Xiaoshan hurriedly explained to Guzibai, pretending to take a step forward to check the door lock. But Guzibai had been wary of him for a long time and stood in front of him. "In that case, it's easy. I'll hold the door to make sure they can't come in." As he spoke, Gu 11 by Hengdao immediately blocked the door, and a fiery martial arts aura rose up from his body, covering his body with a layer of golden hegemony. The three iron hands were immediately dumbfounded. They couldn't tell for a while whether Guzibai was sincere or just trying to trick them, but this guy blocked the door and they really had no choice. Just when the three of them were anxious, Su Tong's voice came to Guzibai's ears, "Don't be afraid, I'm not far from you. I'll shout 3 times, and then you open the door and just rush out. The more noise there is, the more likely it is bigger is better." At the same time, in the team channel, Gaozhou and others also asked for support. Su Tong asked them not to act rashly, and he was already prepared. After finishing speaking, Su Tong walked to the door, quietly opened the door a crack, looked into the corridor, and saw the backs of Kuroishi Taro and Shushida Akamoto, and was about to kill them. Suddenly a strange feeling came over him. Su Tong glanced sideways and found that the door opposite him had also opened a crack at some point. A pair of scarlet eyes were staring at him through the crack in the door. When their eyes met, Su Tong and the other party were stunned at the same time. After hesitating for a moment, the other party slowly opened the door, revealing a big mouth. "Look, am I beautiful?" I believe that normal people would probably turn green when they see this scene. But Su Tong was stunned for only a second, then grinned and pointed at Kuroishi Taro and Shushita Akamoto not far away. "I think, they are more beautiful."